Welcome everybody. It's episode 309 of the Severe MMA podcast. My name is Sean Sheehan, aka the Pod God, the Score Lord, the Legend, the Man Amongst Men, joined today by the Sadio Mane of Irish MMA media, Graham McDonald.
Struggling, reaching for one there.
Yeah, I was like, we were just talking about Mane before we started. I'll throw that one in. We're joined by Graham McDonald anyway to talk about a little bit of MMA. I saw people calling it the best card in MMA history, and we'll get into that in a second, but I thought it was one of the most insane cards in MMA history anyway, whichever way you spin it. And what's coming up next week and everything else like that as well, and a bit of PFL. But before we do that, we must tell you that this episode of the podcast is presented by Manscaped. The flowers are blooming, the grass is going, so it's time to mow your own lawn. Thanks to our sponsors Manscaped, you can trim the hedges below the belt safely and efficiently. I'm talking about the ball trimmers. Manscaped, the global leaders in men's below the waist grooming, have an exclusive offer for our audience. Use the code SEVEREMMA and get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Join the other 2 million men who trust Manscaped. They're here to make your balls so smooth and smelling nice. After all, it's time for some spring cleaning. Spring has sprung, and Manscaped even has the best tools for your job. I was actually getting my Manscaped out the other day. Hold on, I have it here. And I was charging for like the first time in about 6 months. And I'm like, what am I even charging for? I don't even need it. It's absolutely brilliant. I know Graham uses his non-stop as well, especially his nose and ear trimmer. But Manscaped are global leaders in men's below the waist grooming and have forever changed the game with their Perfect Package 3.0. This legit package has precision engineered tools for your family jewels and will help unlock your confidence to bring out your best self this summer. The Perfect Package 3.0 kit comes with the Essential Lawnmower 3.0. It's a waterproof, cordless ball trimmer and has a ton of other liquid formations to find your best grooming routine. This third generation trimmer features the cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce shaving accidents. I know Graham said a few of them over the years. Manscaped obsesses over technology to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience, and they use the best ingredients for their formulations. Inside the Perfect Package, you'll also have the Manscaped crop preserver, which is absolutely brilliant, an anti-chafing ball deodorant moisturizer. It's starting to get hot outside, and this is crucial so your balls stop sticking to your leg now. And as our treat, you'll find a crop reviver as well, which you can spray on the old flowers. On top of the Lawnmower 3.0 formulations, Manscaped is turning 2 free gifts: shed travel bag and the boxers, for extra little bit of comfort. This is your perfect package for your perfect package. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code SEVEREMMA at manscaped.com. Do yourself a favour and use the right job for your tool. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code SEVEREMMA at manscaped.com. It's spring cleaning, baby, and your balls will thank you. So, Graham, let's get straight into it here. UFC 261. Let's not bury the lead. This was a crazy card. It was funny because I was like, I was going to, because I know we were recording the podcast on Monday this week, and apologies to everyone if you're expecting it Monday morning. We might do this a few times throughout the summer, because you know the summer people are out having barbecues on Sunday and stuff, and we might have one ourselves, so we might be more regular during the summer on Monday, but it'll be out every Sunday and Monday anyway, so you won't be too far off. But I was like, right, you know what, I'm going to have a little bit of an early night, maybe turn on my alarm and watch the main fights and then catch up with the rest of them afterwards. And I kind of did that, but I kind of woke up and I was watching the middle of the prelims, and I saw the rest of them, and I was kind of watching it with the sound down at first. And you know what? It's a great experience with the crowd back, with the sound down. And now I didn't have the sound. I had the sound muted at the start, but I had the sound down to 7 or 8. And you could kind of hear the background noise, and you could hear the shots, but not the commentary too much, which for me is absolutely is absolutely what I want. But I was looking at a few of the fights, and I saw a few people talking about it afterwards and talking about the difference the crowd makes. And I feel like we were talking about it last week and on the betting show even, and we were talking about what difference it might have. I think, you know what difference it really has. It has a difference on the we were talking about, Mane there before the podcast started, and the little bit of extra pressure you have when you're like taking a shot where you're maybe not in form or something. I think this put like a little bit of extra pressure on every fighter, every referee, every movement that was happening. I think it's a lot different and a lot harder to fight absolutely perfectly in this. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I suppose it's up to the people itself. Me personally, I would rather no crowd, and I would rather get the very, very best out of the fighters, but it does add that extra bit of jeopardy, the word we've been using an awful lot over the last while, I feel like, and it adds to the show. And MMA is all about the fights, but
I think
go on.
That saying, like, under the bright lights, can they do it in any sport? I think it's more in front of the big crowd, in front of under the pressure, the noise, the tension that the crowd provides.
Yeah.
And obviously, you mentioned it. You can kind of be more methodical or something. You're not under any pressure from the crowd. You're not. Maybe it feels more like a spar, or a little bit more like a spar than a fight.
Yeah.
Without a crowd, but with the crowd there, you could see from the first fight, and like straight away, the first fight of the night and the second fight, once somebody landed a big shot, the crowd were going crazy. The crowd were like, really into the fights from the very start, and you could see that the fighters were like, energized by that. And maybe we saw a couple of fighters maybe get an adrenaline dump that we haven't seen as much in the last year since the fans haven't been there. So that it's definitely extra factors that we kind of maybe take for granted over the years that people will have to get used to again, even though it's only been, for most people, one fight or two fights.
I think those early, I wasn't up watching them at the time, but I know you were up watching, but those early fights as well, do you think they set the tone? Like when people come out there and they start banging out, and everything I was reading after I woke up was like, these two are like fight of the year, fight of the night contenders right at the very start. That sets the tone too, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, straight away people were like, "Oh, this is going to be really hard to beat fight of the night for the first night. It could be fight of the, contender fight of the year." And then the second fight, people were like, "Well, it's already not fight of the night. The first fight's already not fight of the night already. This is a kind of rip roaring start to the card." And I think it definitely plays into other fighters. It seems to, like, we've seen it out in the past. If a card if there's a few upsets early or a few crazy fights early, it seems to be that there might be more to come in the card. And when there's boring decisions, or when there's a lot of decisions, that can sometimes lead to a card full of decisions.
Yeah.
So I don't know why that seems to happen, but maybe it's the crowd getting into it, and obviously the crowd were really up for this fight. It seemed like we haven't seen, since UFC Dublin, we haven't seen a crowd so up for it for the first fight of the night.
Great,
we haven't seen that in a long time. People going crazy when the walkout music hits for the first fight, and that we haven't. I can't remember that happening since Paddy Houlihan in UFC Dublin. I might be missing a card somewhere, but I don't think so.
Yeah, it's great. Like, there probably is like some window into, I don't know, Uruguay or somewhere like that. But yeah, I think nowhere was as vociferous and insane as Dublin, and I think this was, like, even from when I turned it on, it was crazy. And now, look, we can have the reservations about the crowd and about putting that many people into it. It still looks very weird when it's not in New Zealand or Australia, where where they don't have much of the old COVID. But look, I don't know. We spoke about that before, and look, I have to mention it. I still think they rushed it. I think if they did this in 2 months' time, it probably would have been the right time, the way that everyone talks about America is going with the vaccines and everything like that. So I don't think it is too far away from being grand and acceptable to most people, but I think like that not too far away is kind of too far away. But however, look, they had it anyway. And
do you know what the situation was with it? Did you have to get like a COVID test before, or was it just fucking free for all?
How could you COVID test that many people? Like Dana White as well was giving out about the Las Vegas Review Journal, that they put out an article with a quote from the UFC's like terms and conditions. Like, wait, you're giving out to them for quoting you? How does that work? But like Dana White, the thing about Dana White as well is, like, he wants journalists that are like the schmo. That's what he wants. He has, when Dana White credentials that doofus to UFC cards, he can never ever again speak about journalistic integrity. like, if you want proper journalistic integrity and want someone to give you a fair go, then you cannot credential someone who is a gimmick to go to your cards and cover them. You lose any opinion on that when you do that. So, look, to me personally, I actually think and I like Adam Hill and I like Heidi Fang over and that works for the Las Vegas Review Journal as well. I think that the start to that was a little bit too much. I thought it was a little bit too much. You criticise it. I don't think starting it off with that was the right way to go. Now, the article itself wasn't as bad, but however, look, we all know. I think everyone will probably agree. Like, even the most, open it up people in the world, and I'm kind of an open it up person now in Ireland, but not as much as like open up to 80,000 people or anything like that in the stadium. But I think most people would think, especially in America, not far off, leave it another while, and look, that's that anyway. But yeah, it was. Look, it's a mad time, and I suppose these kind of conversations have ended a little bit. And it's weird because I'm kind of like, walking over it here a little bit because we've talked about it so much. I think people are just kind of sick about talking about it. And like, I was reading a thing as well about Florida and the area there itself that like they are not even like doing the numbers properly or something anymore. It's like, you don't know if you've too much or too less, or it's supposed to be an absolute mess around places like that. So even if there was like a super spreader event from this, we wouldn't know it, and even if there wasn't, we wouldn't know it either. So I don't know. It's a weird kind of situation there. But however, let's get back to the fights. So you talked about the undercard there, but there was some mad fights, and then coming to the other undercard, we had Patrick Sabatini beating Tristan Connolly. Brendan Allen got one of only like 4 straight ankle locks in the history of the UFC. From then on, I saw these fights live. Dwight Grant, close fight against Sekulic, and Randy Brown with a beautiful one-arm rear naked choke against Alex Oliveira. Well, one arm and one shoulder rear naked choke, I suppose. I think having that up against the fence actually helped him because he could like push his arm underneath it, and I think he could put more pressure on the left side of the neck of Alex Oliveira because he was kind of using the cage at different times, and I think that really helped him. But it was a really beautiful submission from Randy Brown. So let's go from the bottom to the top.
A big win for him as well. Like,
huge win, yeah.
We both picked against him, and he made it look easy.
Yeah, 100%, very good. Let's go from the bottom to the top on this card because I think you kind of have to, because the way it went. So Anthony Smith versus Jimmy Cruz was one of those fights where Anthony Smith looked fantastic. His jab was absolutely beautiful. He was just touching up Jimmy Cruz, and I was thinking towards maybe at one stage around, he was getting maybe a little bit too excited, and he needed kind of the end of the round to come to kind of, take a breath and get back to his jabbing game again, but while still winning it the whole way around. That was just a little thing I saw. I don't think necessarily it was a huge part of the round, but then the leg kick came, and Jimmy Cruz got hit with that low calf kick. It wasn't even really a low calf kick. It was like on the knee sort of one. It was like the top of the calf, which is not as low as we'd normally look at them with, like the Chandler one or the Sean O'Malley one or the Conor McGregor one even. And his leg just went. It was one. Everyone knew, I think, the second his leg went.
A nerve or. Yeah, he was trying to play it off even right before the doctor called it off at the start of the round. He was trying to be like, I'm grand, and trying to take a step backwards, and you could see the foot or the leg was dead. It just wasn't responding. And, we're seeing these kicks. We're going to talk about the next fight, like how it can go wrong in throwing these kicks. But if these calf kicks, they seem to have. I know this was a bit of a high calf kick, but they seem to have less risk as well as more impact. Maybe it's because these guys haven't built up the resistance in their calves that they have in their regular leg kicks. But we can talk about the Weidman thing. Like, if he had thrown that kick lower, I think there's less chance of pretty much no chance or very slim chance of him breaking his leg like he did. So like these calf kicks are definitely something. They're not trivial at all. They're fight enders. We've seen it like time and time again now. We've seen it more frequently and more frequently as time goes on. And you maybe expect to see a transition away from regular leg kicks into calf kicks for the near future anyway, until somebody figures out how to successfully counter or to the best way to check these kicks.
Yeah, it's a very interesting. Like, we had the exact juxtaposition which you talk about there between the first two fights. You know, you had the one where it was the guy who ate the kick who was the victim of it, and the next one it was the guy who threw the kick was the huge victim of it, which we'll get to in a second. But on the Jimmy Crute one, I think it's an interesting, because when this happens, it's like the leg, the kind of the ankle goes where you can't stand in it, you can't put any pressure on it. And then you're in a situation where I don't think he's feeling that much pain in it. And I don't feel like he feels...
Yeah, rubbery or something.
Yeah, it's like a fake leg or something. You know, it's like he's trying to stand down in it, and there's nothing there. It's like the bones go out of your leg, and you're just... and it's so weird, because it hit like a foot and a half away from where the issue was. It completely just deadens you, and you can't do anything with it. Do you ever wake up like in the middle of the night having like slept on your arm, and like you completely have just a dead arm, you can't do nothing with it? I imagine that's what the leg feels like, and it's terrible, because
like you look at the replay, it looks exactly like that. Say you've been sitting on your leg or something, or sleeping on your ankle or whatever, your foot, and it's just completely dead, and you don't realize, and you try to step on it, and it just, you know, gives way and twists under you. Mm-hmm. And obviously, if you can't plant your feet, you're at a huge disadvantage in an MMA fight. And you know, you can be as tough as you want. You know, you can be like the hardest man in MMA, but if you can't, you know, put pressure on your leg in any way, and have no control over your foot or your leg, then you're pretty much fucked.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Like, so,
do you know what we need to have a quick chat about here before we maybe even move on to the Weidman one, because we'll just talk about the Weidman one by itself. How do you defend these, right? I think there's only one way to defend them, right? Let's talk about, right, if you're getting punched in the chin continually, and you have an issue, you keep getting knocked out. Well, how do you solve that, right? There's two ways to solve that. You either cover up with your hands, you know, or you move that chin. You get it out of the way, you move the head, you either move backwards, move to the left, move to the right, get out the way of it. With the leg, with the low calf kicks, there's no way to cover it up. You can't put your hands down and, you know, cover up your legs like that. So you have to move them. You have to make it a moving target. I think that's the only way. Now, okay, the other way around it is to counter it, I suppose. But the damage might already be done by then. And if you counter it as well, it's unlikely you're going to be able to counter the first one. It's going to have to be the second one. That means you're taking two. That means you're putting up that risk even more. And is the person throwing the kicks thinking, right, I'm kicking from...
Two. We've seen like in the Jacasey fight, we've seen in the Chandler fight, we've seen one kick can do it. Two can easily do it if they're placed correctly. One can do it. Like, so it is definitely a tough one. You know, it's a punch is coming at you. It's in your eye line, but a low calf kick maybe is, like, you know, harder to see coming. It's a really difficult one to avoid, I think.
And it's a thing as well that
changing your game a lot. Yeah,
not everyone does it, like, and it's a specific game plan, I suppose, you have to have. Dan Hardy spoke really well to me.
Surely it's going to keep coming in more and more and more and more. The more success we see with it, the more, like, you know, leg breaks we see with the regular traditional leg kick. The like, you know, high profile guys like Chandler and McGregor, and, you know, these guys are bringing it to the attention of all these fighters. And, you know, everybody's always trying to add skills to their game, and people are, you know, trying these things out of the gym, and they're probably seeing how effective it is. Even not throwing them full blasts, you know, throwing them just at your partner. So I see these just being gradually more and more effective and more regular in the game.
Yeah, 100%. The issue is what we saw with the Weidman one. You know, you can so someone, if you're the person throwing the leg kick, you can. We'll get to that in a second, the bad parts of it. But if you're the person eating the leg kick, I would you can only give yourself one now. I think you can only give yourself one, and then you're going to have to start moving. You're going to have to start pulling that leg out the way. You're going to have to start stepping in the second when you see it coming, or be really, really careful stepping out. And the problem with that is, we spoke about it directly after the McGregor-Poirier fight, and Poirier actually didn't land that many leg kicks in that fight. For the first 3 minutes of the round. I think he only landed one leg kick or something like that of round one, but obviously he started landing more after that. The issue with it is when people are winning fights as well early and landing big strikes, say like McGregor was in that fight, you are in a position where what you're doing is being effective and you're winning the fight in that way, but you're also putting yourself in a position or maybe a stance where you winning the fight is also you probably getting TKO'd by leg kicks, you know, because you're standing in that stance. It is a very, very tough thing to alter, because if McGregor, right, saw he took 1-2 leg kicks, or he's saying like, fuck it, I can't take 2 or 3 more of these, he's going to have to change his whole game plan. It's not just McGregor, whoever else, you know, maybe it would have been Jimmy Cruz before he took this one, if he realised just before he took this one, and I think it was just one with Jimmy Cruz, but you know what I mean, right, I'm going to have to change up my game plan.
Well, like, if you look, you look at the Jacasey one, he comes in with a game plan and against a tough guy, and all of a sudden that game plan's completely out the window. Yeah. He's on one leg. You know, it's it's a complete game changer if you can land one of those in the correct place. And you know, surely, we know how much work these guys put in, and how they're always trying to develop their skills, and there's no way these guys aren't trying to add that to their arsenal. And I'm probably forgetting a bunch of effective calf kick finishes and stuff like that, but you know, the more high profile ones that happen as well, like, you know, I'm sure, you know, people like Jacasey and people like McGregor and all those that have had it happen to them are going to add it to their game as well.
Yeah, like it happened to Dustin Poirier.
These guys are you know, these guys are constant in the gym, and you know, they're going to eat some of those leg kicks and realize how effective on them they are. They're going to land some of those and realize how effective they are. And this is surely going to become a huge part of the game.
Yeah.
How do you? I don't know. It'd be interesting to see, but like, if McGregor and Poirier happens again in, as scheduled, then you know, how do you, in a few weeks? How do you? You know,
the dogs don't like the leg kicks. The dogs don't like the left kicks.
Yeah, how do you? Sorry, they're distracting me there. But how do you overcome how do you overcome something like that? Like, you know, it's very, like, as you're saying, you might need to change a lot of your game, and when you're in advantageous positions, seemingly advantageous positions, you could be one well-placed calf kick away from you know, everything swinging in the opposite direction.
Yeah, or you know, you could be one well-placed calf kick away from winning the fight, or you can be one well-placed calf kick away from what happened to Chris Weidman.
Are we just going to end up with like everybody going out and trying to calf kick each other?
I don't know.
Constantly.
There has to, as I said, you know,
these expert calf kickers.
It could be. Like Muay Thai lads will be thinking, right, I'm just going to kick this guy. But people are going to have to find a way. What fight was it a couple of weeks ago where there was like an was it a Bellator fight, I think, where the lad kept ankle picking people? That might be the way to do it. Just drop down on those fucking calf kicks, catch them, and pull a guy down with the calf kicks when they do it. Like McGregor caught a few against Poirier. Like, that is a thing that could be the answer for them as well. Like, there's a lot of different things people can do, but just picking the right thing, I suppose it is. But on the Chris Weidman one, we'll have to talk about that. Like, when this happens, I think McGregor actually tweeted about it as well. Like, it wasn't properly checked. And I was looking back and I was like, you know, he's kind of right, actually. Uriah Hall did, like, it wasn't that he kind of planted the leg. I think it was the leg was already planted and Weidman saw it and threw it. And just by that, just by catching it in the wrong place, a little bit high, as you said, or kind of, sometimes they catch him on the knee, but I think this was more like shin to shin or top of the shin to shin. Weidman's leg just shattered, and it's like one of the most sickening things you see in MMA. And it's one of those ones you watch, as me and you and everyone probably watching it, was the second it happened, we knew. We didn't even have to see him falling back. We didn't even have to see him try to stand on it. We knew what had happened, and it was like, you watch MMA sometimes and you're thinking, sometimes we see like a big knockout, like even the Masvidal one, like that happened at the night, which we'll get to, and you're thinking, oh, what a great knockout, and it's all like the positives on it, and it's, you never think about, you know, afterwards, okay, we'll think about the brain damage, we think about the bad things that happen, and we usually have that as a wider discussion. But on the night, at the time, we rarely even think about it. Or even like the Cruz one, it's like, look, it was sore, but he'll get better now. This is the sort of one when Weidman happens that you'd nearly feel like crying. Like, you feel so fucking terrible. You feel terrible. It's just the most disgusting thing, because it's so helpless, and there's just nothing he can do, is there?
Sucks the life out of it. Yeah.
Oh my god! Like, I remember I was at a rugby match once. One of my friends was playing, and a guy like broke his ankle, and they had to wait for like I don't know how long to get oxygen to him and stuff. And I remember watching it. I was like, oh my god, this is one of the toughest things I've ever seen in my fucking life. There's nothing like just a broken bone like that. And I suppose, being down through the years, who was it? Peter Schmeichel that was looking at one of Man United playing, and Dibergil Cisse playing for Liverpool did it a couple of times, didn't he? And so, and obviously Anderson Silva as MMA fans, and Corey Hill as well. It's something we're familiar with, and it's not happened that much in MMA, but that's why we're familiar with it. I think it's just because it's so haunting. I think haunting is the word.
It looks so unnatural and so painful and just so wrong. And just when when they plant their leg afterwards, it's fucking. You really see how bad it is. It's just fucking awful. Like, that's a bad injury. That's Weidman, we already talked about it. Like, I picked him to be able to win the decision here, but like, we're under no illusions that he's not what he was, and he's on the downturn of his career, and this is a fucking devastating injury. This is not good. Like, this could be a potential, like,
Like, when your career is almost over, I think. Look, it's a sort of injury though that people do come back from. Look at Luke Shaw playing for Man United. Arguably the best left back in the world this year, definitely in the Premier League by a mile this season. And he had the same thing happen to him. He shattered his leg into pieces, and he has come back. So like, it has happened to people. It's happened to different people, and they've come back.
But eating leg kicks and stuff like that, and throwing leg kicks,
I know, but
you're kicking a football.
I know it's different, but there is hope, but it takes a long time. The problem is,
you definitely can't rush it anyway.
No, the problem is with Chris Weidman. He's in his 30s now, and he's like had the best part of his career. If he could come back and get better, and then take another year to work his way back into it, and then come back, I think it's very doable. The problem with that is you're wasting 2 years of your career there to do that, and he's probably going to try to rush back within a year and come back.
Well, actually thinking about it now, if he takes a year out, he's not sparring, he's not taking any head damage. That could help too. Like, nobody, like me and you, don't know much about the brain, but like, it seems that the medical professionals and the scientists and stuff just don't really know either. But so it's hard to tell. Like, some guys you think, he's finished, he's chinny, like, fucking Alex Rovering about 15 years ago, people were calling for him to be retired, and guys can make resurgences and nobody really knows what's going on. Like, sometimes guys' chins seem to recover, and other times they're just glass jawed. So maybe he could, like, take something from it, but it just seems like a devastating injury. And if you're kind of on the way up and you have that championship gold at the top, and you're like, oh, if I can just do this rehab and do all this and get back, I'll make it, we'll go again. But Weidman probably knows himself that he's not what he was. He used to be in the gym every day, probably dominating. Now he's not. Like, he's probably not delusional about it. Like,
it's a sick irony too, isn't it? Like, that he was the one against Anderson Silva, and now he is having the exact same thing happen to him. Like, these are his only two rematches in the history of his career, and both of them ended in snapped legs. It's like, and even Uriah Hall said it afterwards. He was the first. Chris Weidman was the first one to beat Anderson in this run, and Uriah Hall was the last one to beat Anderson in this run. And then this is what happened. It's just insane. And Uriah Hall, you have to give credit to him as well. All class. Like, and I watched back the fight, and his interview afterwards, and he like took a breath and was like, right, what am I going to say? And he said all the right things. He was really, you couldn't say a better thing about Uriah Hall. And I think a lot of people have criticised him down through the years, and even we've criticised him. We
can criticise, like, a lot of stuff about his, maybe, or we can talk about his mental side of the game, but I think he's always been, like, a nice, really nice guy, maybe even too nice for, to be a top level, 100%. Very, very top level guy. We talked about his struggles with wanting, knocking people out. Like, most people land that knockout in what was the man's name? Can't remember. The Ultimate Fighter. Yeah, Adam Sella. He was devastated by that. Most people be thinking, that's my fucking ticket to the stardom. You know what I mean? That knockout. And I think You know, nobody can doubt that. And obviously, he's not gonna. You see something like that, you're not gonna run around celebrating. It's fucking sickening to see, and you know, to hear. He probably heard it better than anybody. You know, the noise that would make. It's disgusting. It's fucking. You know, it's nobody wants to win like that. Like, obviously, you want to win by any means necessary, but that's like, you know, that's not the way at all. You want to win. You'd probably prefer to. You know, somebody like Uriah Hall would probably prefer to lose a decision to Weidman to win like that.
100%, I think he would. But yeah, look, best wishes to Chris Weidman. The surgery went well for him anyway, and he looked in good spirits yesterday. So hopefully he'll be back at it again, and hopefully it isn't as serious as it first looked. Because look, them ones generally aren't. They generally can be fixed, and sometimes when it's a clean break like that, you can actually put it back together better. And I'm no doctor, obviously, but that's what people say. And hopefully he will be. Back up and running ASAP. And in the three title fights, I suppose, Shevchenko versus Andras. Let's get to that first, because that's the sort of fight where you look at it and you're like, right, these are two strikers. This is a kind of the Muay Thai person against the woman who comes in and throws these big hooks and lands big shots and throws to the body an awful lot. And I was talking in the betting show about, like, this won't be a boring fight. Andras won't wait. And I think the issue is here, it's not that she waited. I think it's Valentina made her wait, because every time she came near her, she made her pay. And obviously making her pay with those big takedowns, those big slams, and the ground and pound was the biggest area of it, because she didn't have a leg to stand on after that. Andras knew every time she came inside, she was getting clinched, she was getting either put against the cage or put on her back. And there was really no answer she had for that. Shevchenko was just too big, too strong, too technical, too tough. And the finish was just devastating in the end. Getting that crucifix and just laying in those shots on her. I suppose before we get to next, what did you think of the fight itself? This was the only fight, I suppose, that I was a little bit disappointed with. And I think I'm mostly disappointed because I think Andras is the only big challenger for her at 125 that we can see coming over the horizon, and there was no challenge really, was there?
Well, yeah, I think you kind of hinted at there. The game plan was brilliant. You know, she very, very likely could have went out there and outstruck Andras, and you know, just used her striking to win the rounds, which I thought she would. Play it safe, you know, not get into any big exchanges that she isn't leading, and she, you know, it looks like that's what Andras expected. I think that's what most people expected, and you know, she's known as a striker. People maybe see the route to victory as a grappler, just because of how, you know, dominant she's been on the feet. But she went out there with maybe a bit of a point to prove as well, that she's a well-rounded martial artist who can do it all. And you know, sometimes we see people who strikers go out of their game and try to wrestle, and maybe they're successful at it, but it tires them out because it's not natural to them, or they're not used to it, and they can gas out because of that. But she none of that was happening. She was all over Andras from minute one, and you know, didn't really give Andras much of a chance at all. Like, you know, okay, it wasn't the most exciting fight, but a really dominant, you know, classy, well executed game plan by Valentina. And you know, it's hard to see anybody in that division,
very hard, you
know, doing much against her.
I think the thing about Shevchenko is she is so confident in all areas. It's insane.
And still evolving.
Yeah,
absolutely. Still evolving, still getting better.
Yeah, I think her, like, the Jessica Ai knockout was the first knockout in her UFC career, I'm pretty sure. And then she's just been TKO on everyone since. Like, this was just desperate, this finish here. Just absolutely, I tweeted on the night, easy. And it was easy. She just made it look so easy. But like, her confidence confidence is a thing in MMA that you can be brought down very quickly from it, and it can be dangerous as well, because if you're too confident, we see what happens, like Luke Rockwell against Michael Bisping. I always go back to that one. But even at the press conference beforehand, someone asked her a question in Spanish, and she just went boom straight away and started answering after asking him in English the whole time before. And you know, obviously she lives, it's a Peru, I think she lives in, so she, you know, she speaks Spanish all the time, I'm sure. But still, it was just one of those things where I'm like, Oh, well, because it takes you go back for a second. It's like, geez, she's just so confident in all areas. And then she comes into the fight and she strikes so confidently. She throws, like, when her elbows inside when she throws them, or when she throws, like, short strikes inside, or those takedowns, it's just like, it's like, drills. To me, every time I see her fighting, it's like she's running a drill and she's trying to do it perfectly, and I feels like she can every time with all of her techniques, and that is an insane thing to think when you're fighting at the very top level as a champion. And now, maybe because she has been getting a few easy matchups, we'll talk about in the main event in a second. This wasn't one of these easy matchups. Though. This wasn't a mismatch. Jessica Andrade has fought at the very top level, being a champion, and is a very, very good fighter. But she made it look easy. And the thing is, like, who's going to be next for her? Is it going to be Lauren Murphy, or is it going to be Arujo, or is it going to be, Jojo, or is she going to go and fight against Amanda Nunez? Like, I think the issue with this fight was against Andras. I think they rushed it. I think there should have been a Lauren Murphy fight or a Jojo fight, whoever it might have been, the next person. Build up Andras more and then give it to her. They can't do with Shevchenko what they did with Demetrius Johnson. They can't put people in there too early, and then, okay, they could build their way up and get rematches, but we want to make the right fights at the right time. Someone say like a Mackenzie Dern and things like that. If you put her in there now, she's going to get destroyed by Shevchenko. Give her another year maybe and put her in there, and then we might see a better fight if she wins the 3 or 4 fights. And look, if she doesn't, she's not the person anyway. Whoever it might be, the up-and-coming people, I think that's what they need to do with that division. And maybe even, look, I said the same about the 135 pound division with Amanda Nunez going up and fighting at 145, and it didn't really happen, although, okay, Pena emerged, so it's not too bad, but I think she kind of talked herself into the fight very, very well. But if she did go up and fight at 135 again and then came back down, it might be the worst thing for the 125 pound division. But look, that Shevchenko Nunez fight has to happen at some stage. The issue with that is we've seen it twice already, and obviously Nunez has won both, and we usually, if there's a fight like this, you need to do it immediately. If it was, let's say Khabib was still there and Usman is still there, and we're like, right, we're going to make that fight. Well, you need to do that pretty quickly because, Chandler is coming, or Oliveira is coming, or McGregor is coming, or Poirier is coming, or whoever it might be, and, Covington is coming, and Wonderboy is coming, and Edwards is coming. But this feels like there's no one coming at either of them two ladies, and they're just the two best in those two divisions, and they'll eventually meet at some stage again when the time is right. I think Shevchenko said that, when the time is right, and I would tend to agree with her, and I'm usually the one, make the best fights, make it now, fuck a division, fuck a weight class. But I think you just let Shevchenko keep going in there beating people, and I think that is kind of fun, and that is, it's one of those ones where, she's kind of just walking all these fights and doing it easier all the time. But are you in the same mind as me, or do you think Shevchenko and Nunez is the fight to make straight away?
I think you could kind of make her this kind of, in the eyes of the fans, is all conquering. Like, she already kind of is in terms of the people who've been paying attention. But, the more kind of title defenses and spectacular finishes, which she seems to have all the time now, that she gets, the more, like, it takes time, especially for women fighters, for casuals, to kind of latch onto them. Amanda Nunez was doing it for a lot of years before anybody was kind of mentioning her outside of the hardcores. So I think, I think if the fight hadn't happened a couple of times before, or was 1-1, it'd be different. But I think if you can kind of let Shevchenko just keep, rattling off the impressive finishes and performances, and if Nunez can keep doing the same, then you can say, oh, this was 5 years ago or whatever, and she's done this since, and you can kind of, Shevchenko will be, if she keeps doing what she's doing, she will be, people will be taking notice. She's on these big cards. You'll eventually get into people's conscious. So yeah, I think I'd wait, just because it's happened twice and she's lost both of them. Even though I think, if the fight would look a lot different, she's evolved a lot and is much more well-rounded than she was even back in those Nunez fights. But it's just that if she does lose, then it's all over. And I think for her chances of beating Nunez and becoming the number one pound for pound woman in the world, it would be better to wait. So yeah, like, if the UFC put it together, I'd be delighted to watch it. But I don't know if the UFC these days, you kind of mentioned talking about the matchmakers there a minute ago. I don't know if there's too much thought going into, 2 or 3 fights down the line for many of these fighters. Like maybe it's a case of the different matchmaking strategies, or it's a fact of just too many cards to too many fighters and too many cards to possibly, plan out paths.
Yeah, it really, it is one of those things. I know I tweeted it the other day, but the matchmakers, they have a tough job and they have to get these fights going. As you mentioned, there's so many, but it is sometimes at the expense of the best fights, which is a very, very, very tough road for the UFC, and a very bad path for the UFC to be going down, because they built their business off of giving us the best fights that we wanted to see all the time. If they're not doing that consistently, or even if they're not doing it, but if they're giving us the fights that we think are not the best fights consistently or regularly even, and that's a big issue. And consistency is the wrong word, but regularly I think it is. If they do it, 3 or 4 times every 6 months, that is an issue for them. Because people, I was actually thinking about this last night, right? Our generation are the last generation of people who are TV watchers. So and the UFC are obviously going to have to adjust and go to digital and everything else like that. And they have, and I know they're on ESPN Plus, and especially with the pay-per-views and stuff there as well. But that's still like a TV product on the internet. I think the UFC need to be very, very careful with what they're doing to this audience, because the audience of our generation is still the audience that wants the best fighting the best, and we want the meritocracy as well. We want, if Uriah Hall works his way up and he deserves a middleweight title shot, we want that, and so we want the combination of both of those things. And sometimes, especially with the Masvidal fight here, and with the Vettori and Adesanya fight, those are things that those are fights that the people don't want. Maybe the Masvidal a little bit different, but the Vettori one and the Derek Lewis Ngannou one as well, those are fights that people don't want. And if you're placating to quickly more content all the time, getting people around, I think that is going to be an issue for you, because UFC can trust their audience that they have now to stay with them as long as they keep doing the right things and keep giving us the right fights. I don't know if you can do the same with a younger audience, which is younger people now, and it's more built on what's happening right now, what's the done thing now, what's the popular thing now. Someone goes viral, we love them for a week, and then you don't love them anymore. That is not the sort of fan you want if you have a product that runs 50 times a year, So they'll obviously have to adjust that product as it goes to maybe get those people, and they should be doing it now as well. But I also think they have to think about the last generation of TV watchers, which I was thinking about yesterday. And those generations go from maybe 25 up. So you still have lots of years left with them. I think it's, the 18 to 49 group is the big key demographic that people like. So you've another, 20 years of a lot of those people. I think you need to be careful with them. But however, that's, I suppose, another debate for another day. And Rob and Dave Miller's point. Here's one last question for you, Graham, or 2 questions even, before we move on to Rose Namajunas, Weili Zhang, right? If you had to pick one person in the UFC, one woman in the UFC, to beat Amanda Nunez, who would you pick? If you could only pick one, with the best shot. I know you'd probably say no one, but if you had to pick one, who would it be?
Probably is Shevchenko. It probably is Shevchenko.
Okay, yeah, okay. Here's another question. Wait. If you had to pick one woman in the UFC to beat Shevchenko, who would it be?
Obviously, Amanda Nunez.
I
wouldn't be picking Shevchenko to beat her, but I wouldn't be as confident as basically Amanda Nunez versus anybody else on the roster.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
We've seen her just.
That fight is I think everyone kind of wants to see it, but I don't know. I as you said there, if she goes 3-0, Nunez, it makes her look bad. But I don't know. I think most MMA fans will know, and hardcores will know it. She's still a great fighter. It's just that Amanda Nunez is the greatest of all time, and she's a lot bigger than her as well and stuff. But yeah, I want to see that fight at some stage. Now I don't think is the time though. But however, we will. I'm sure we will see it at some stage.
I think she should move back up before, not just fight. Have a fight up at the weight again before.
Maybe. I don't know.
You know, moving up and going straight in against Amanda Nunez.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I wonder, would Nunez be able to make 125 pounds? I doubt it, I suppose. She could become
just before we move off that, you know, maybe the UFC getting this guaranteed money from ESPN for pay-per-views kind of makes them a bit lazy. You know, they don't need to.
Yeah, 100%.
They don't need to make the you know, it's a short term kind of view. You're like, oh, well, this money's coming in, but I think long term it will damage. Like a lot of people don't, you know, a lot of people when the UFC was on once every 3 weeks or whatever, that would be boxed off as I'll be in watching that. But now it's like, oh well, I'll catch it tomorrow or catch the highlights or whatever. You know what I mean? So you don't want people getting into that trend either.
It's tough as well because I think we've a false sense of what the actual numbers are now, because obviously the numbers aren't coming out as much as they used to, but also the numbers that come out are always very good. And we're in the middle of a pandemic, so people are like stuck inside. And then, you know, that Tony Ferguson Gaethje fight that did like mega buys. It was like, that would never have done those sort of buys at normal times. So I think it's, you know, the UFC being the only sport in town, I think a lot of people kind of like that as well, and you know, decided to support the UFC and maybe fell in love with the UFC a little bit over during that time. So look, I think. Do you think
they kind of missed the chance to capitalize on? Like they definitely did very well. But you know, as you said, like, you know, the Ferguson versus Gaethje is a huge fight for MMA hardcores. But usually, outside of a pandemic, you wouldn't have probably, you know, done very well at all on pay-per-view. But the UFC, like, obviously they've done good numbers, and ESPN are probably happy. But in terms of the chance that they had to, you know, if they had to put on some huge, big Jeopardy fights for, more often and more stacked cards, maybe they could have, you know, really kind of boosted the sport's popularity. As you said, being the only sport in town for, you know, a few months there,
I think
was a big opportunity. I think they kind of half missed.
I 100% agree, and I think the time they missed it was before the McGregor fight and like November, December, because remember we had like those fucking 25 cards in a row, and there was nothing. Okay, we had the Figueiredo Moreno fight, but how many people were like watching that? There was
no huge star power.
No, there was no huge star power around him. They needed to get someone.
Makes nobody really knows what his thinking was, and kind of like, you know, sidelining Conor and, you know, stuff like that. And you know, obviously not John Jones is obviously holding out for money and not, you know, getting him in there. I think, you know, you could have shelled out a bit extra, maybe more than you usually paid for somebody like a Jones to come in, fight a heavyweight fight. That would have been, you know, you mentioned like around November. If he had gone in there in November against a heavyweight champion or even a former heavyweight champion, that would have been a fucking huge fight. And you would, like, you know, maybe you wouldn't make the money back because you don't have the gate receipts, but in terms of like getting eyes on the sport and, you know, getting people into it, that would have been huge.
Yeah.
And obviously Conor wanted to fight regularly, and that didn't happen. So I think a lot of opportunities missed.
Yeah, I think the UFC. People are probably listening to this now and thinking, like, what are they talking about? They're doing great numbers now, and I think they are, but I think they could be doing great numbers for a longer amount of time if they had preyed on it. Like, if they had really taken that opportunity, they could have kept those new fans as well as keeping the older fans. Because at the end of the day, all anyone wants to see, whether you're a new fan or an old fan or whatever you are, you want to see the best fight the best, you know. And if we do see the best fight the best all the time, regularly, every time, we will have confidence in the UFC to continue to do it. But, you know, however, I suppose that is as well a discussion for another day. Alright, we're 50 minutes in and we're still going through this card, and we've loads more to go. Let's go through it. Rose Namajunas, Zhang Weili. This to me, okay, I remember we gave percentages, or I gave percentages anyway. I think both of us did, about these three fights, and I think we both agreed that Namajunas probably had the best chance out of all three of them. But I was still very shocked the way she did it. I think, like, I had this fight kind of previewed as the boxer versus the puncher. And you know what? I think Zhang Weili might have had as well, because she did not see this coming, or she was. I think this head kick. Rose had thrown a few leg kicks, and she was doing a lot of heavy movement to stop Zhang landing kicks, which, you know, we had a brilliant discussion earlier on about the leg kicks and the low kicks and how you stop them and its movement. And I think Namajunas, that's what she was trying to do. She was trying to move an awful lot, so she wasn't a standing target to get hit with, you know, leg kicks or kicks to the body or kicks to the head. And she was using her hands because she's very long and very tall. and is a very good boxer, and was using her hands when she did get inside with that movement to land on Zhang. And I just think she was not expecting it. And this was brilliant game planning, because the thing about MMA is variety. I always say the word variety. And if you can throw something that your opponent is not expecting, that maybe they haven't seen from you before. Now, I know Rose has thrown head kicks before and stuff, but maybe not a thing in this area at that time of the fight when she's expecting you can catch him cold and you can hit him with a beautiful technique after getting trained by one of the best trainers in the world, Trevor Whitman, just absolutely brilliant. Then you're going to come into trouble, and you're going to win a title for Rose Namajunas. And it was absolutely, this was a beautiful knockout. And I'm a big Zhang Weili fan, and I picked her to win. I thought she'd win, and I think she'll come back again. I think she'll probably be champion again. Whether she beats Rose or not, who knows? But to me, Rose Namajunas, as like a fan of the X's and O's of the sport, and watching fights afterwards and seeing how people adjusted, and we'll talk about the adjustments in the main event as well, because I think there were a good few in that. But what she did against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, where she kind of killed her forward and back motion with her angles, and it sometimes becomes a bit of a meme in MMA, but coming in with that big left hook and knocking her out in the first fight, and hitting her with a lot of them in the second fight as well, and just kind of finding out her style a little bit, I think it was brilliant. And what she did here as well, I don't know if I mentioned it on the I wanted a podcast during the week, but I think it was Grabaka Hitman tweeted out about how Zhang is very open up through the middle, and the boxing of Namajunas could be an issue for her. And I watched back a couple of Zhang fights, I was like, yeah, she kind of is alright. And, I thought the boxing might be the issue then, but I still was picking Zhang and all. But the fact that Namajunas watched that and said, right, here's the kick is the one, and the one shot that's going to land right up through the middle rather than the punches, and whether it's her or Trevor Whitman, whoever it might be, the whole team, genius. And it was absolutely brilliant, and a beautiful kick and a beautiful KO. And we can talk about the stoppage in a second, but what did you think of the performance from Namajunas? It was pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah, I agree with that. It was absolutely brilliant. It was definitely, routes to victory for Rose. We talked about him going in. I mentioned on the betting show, I thought she would lose in the later rounds. I thought, the first couple of rounds be very close. She might even win one or two, but that she'd kind of get worn down. But the kick itself didn't even look that powerful. It was just so well placed and fast that it just the second it landed, you knew it was over. It was an absolutely brilliant performance. We were if you were kind of expecting an early finish, you probably would have picked Rose, but the chances of that happening, I think maybe we were underestimating Rose, but the chances of that happening kind of in a lower weight like that, I think are less as well, and that just shows how well placed and how quick and perfect this kick was to put her away like that. And as you mentioned, it must have been a shot they picked out before, because she obviously got the job done quickly, went straight to it, and it landed to perfection. And she's not, she is known for like mixing it up, and she's not really known for that. So yeah, I think, as you mentioned, I think it was great coaching and great execution of a game plan.
It's funny that you mentioned the finishing in the lower weight classes, because that was the point I was going to make, and not just finishing, but knockouts, as you said. Like, if you think about it, right, the lower down the weight, heavyweight, you're more than likely going to get knocked out, and that's what I said to it. But that was my whole pick for Francis Ngannou. You go in there 10 rounds with him, you're probably fucking getting knocked out in one of them, And in light heavyweight, you come down along, and the men's 125, there's a lot less than the heavyweight or lightweight or whatever it might be, and then you go over to the women's, and you might see more submissions and stuff like that, and the level is obviously still growing in the women's compared to men's with
TKOs as well,
TKO,
just
115,
devastating one strike finishes.
And she has them now. She has won in 2 title fights she has one against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and she has one against Zhang Weili. That's incredible. That really is. And, 2 very different ways she did it as well. Like, Rose Namajunas I always liked Rose, and I always talked about her improving. And I still think Rose is improving right in front of us. She's only 14 fights. It's absolutely crazy. I don't think Rose has kind of touched where she's going to be. 8 years into the game, but I think she's maybe 2 to 3
people
years
have
away
known
from
her
her
for a
top.
long time because of the Ultimate Fighter. But most of those girls in the Ultimate Fighter had 3, 4 fights at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They were
it was
like
crazy.
babies in the sport.
Yeah, 100%. She had to learn. She came in her first. She lost against Tisha Torres in Invicta. Lost against Carla Esparza for a title in her fucking 4th fight. It's absolutely crazy. Like, if you look at the level of fighters she fought after, look, Carla Esparza, Angela Hill in her 5th fight. And we know what Angela Hill's like, but in her 5th fight, Paige Van Zandt, Tisha Torres, Kovalkiewicz, Waterson, Jędrzejczyk twice, Andrade twice, and Zhang Weili. Incredible. Like, that's insane. Even in her first fight, she fought Emily Kagan, who's been around for a long time as well. That is insane, the level of fighter she has been fighting throughout her whole career. Never an easy matchup. Even in The Ultimate Fighter, she fought Joanne Calderwood, Randa Marcus, Alex Chambers, all UFC vets afterwards. Like, crazy. Like Rose Namajunas, I think Rose is a bit of an oddball, and stuff like that. But I feel like MMA has always had oddballs. Even if you look at Nick Diaz when he came on the last day and everyone was cheering him. Nick Diaz is like the oddest human being on planet Earth. Like, and MMA fans loved him. I feel like Rose is a little bit different to that, obviously, but I think people need to start viewing Rose as like a kind of a cult favourite, I think, because I think that's, and her comments during the week and stuff, and she apologised for them as well, so she's done that twice now, so I think people, we can move past it now. She has apologised twice, or comments, no one like that, but we can move past it. I think we need to appreciate her a little bit more, to be honest, and it's interesting what happens in that division as well, because, Jędrzejczyk has gone for a title fight before this. She's not going to get it now, because Rose has beaten her twice. Will Zhang get the immediate rematch? I don't know, when it's so clean and clear like that and they haven't fought before. I don't think so. And then you have Yan Xiaonan. I think she's fighting coming up soon. We mentioned Carla Esparza as well. And obviously, Carla has beaten Rose before for the title, so maybe that's one she would want to get back. I don't know, she fought Kovalkiewicz as well. I know Kovalkiewicz is not there or thereabouts. She lost to Kovalkiewicz, but I think there's a lot of options in the 115 division, and we'll see how it goes. But very good from Rose, and Zhang will be back. Zhang will fight for the title again. I'd be surprised if she didn't, and I'd be very surprised if she didn't fight for it, but I'd be surprised if she didn't win it at some stage as well. But Usman versus Masvidal, the main event, I said during the week I thought it would be an easier win for Usman this time, but I didn't think it'd be this easy, to be honest. I didn't. I thought Usman would maybe try to make it a little bit easier on himself, but he didn't. He went in there, he threw his jab, he stood with him. I talked, and anyone watched the 2 rewatches I did over the last couple of weeks, I talked all about the jab and how Masvidal might counter it, and I also talked a lot, I called this one perfectly in terms of the stance switches. He was switching stances all the time in the first fight, Masvidal was. In the second fight, almost not at all, especially in the first round. Didn't move at all, and gave Usman an easier place to plant, to get his takedowns, and to go for the front leg to take him down. And Usman just didn't do it. Usman just struck with him, and I think that actually caught Masvidal off a little bit, or caught him out a little bit. His countering of the jab was non-existent. I think one judge gave the first round to Masvidal. I actually don't know how. It wasn't a blowaway round. It wasn't a 10-8 or anything like that. But I just think Usman ate him up, and I think it was easy from second one for Usman. He was beating him on the feet, and then a minute and 2 seconds into the second round, he just lands that lovely lead left. Was a left hook, and then the right hand right down, and then the finishing shots as well. Just a devastating knockout. And as I tweeted on the night, this is what happens when you make huge mismatches like this. You make someone like Usman look really, really good. And, I think Luke Thomas said it, that the shark camp, or the shark camp and no preparation for the last fight hurt Masvidal, but it also hurt Usman as well. Even, Usman didn't have time to prepare for Masvidal as he did. He's preparing for Gilbert Burns. So it's obviously a very different sort of fighter. But this time he had prepared for him. He knew what was coming, and he absolutely showed his levels. And this was one of those fights where it was just different levels, way different sort of fighter. And like Masvidal, we've given Masvidal credit to get to where he's gotten to with the skill set he has, which is a very good skill set, but not near the top welterweights in the world, and to get 2 title fights out of it and a huge fight against Nate Diaz, fair fucks them, fair play at them. But this was levels, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think everybody, most people, knew going in this was Usman's fight, but we talked about it, over the last few Usman fights that, he's known as this wrestler, and maybe people think he's boring, but his striking is way underrated, and it's evolving and it's constantly improving fight to fight. He's getting more comfortable, and we can see that, not many people would have picked Usman to knock out Masvidal early on the feet. If you were picking a knockout, you probably would have been thinking, you wear him down and maybe get a knockout in the later rounds, or in any round in a ground and pound situation or something like that. Mm-hmm. Masvidal isn't, as you mentioned, he isn't, there's levels of this, he isn't anywhere near Usman's level, but Usman has just shown that he's, even at the things that Masvidal is good at, he's better. And yeah, he's going to be a hard man to beat. He's kind of talking to himself. He needs somebody to come out and motivate him. Maybe, lack of motivation might be the thing that can slow him down. But if he can keep motivated, and it's looking out there, it's hard to see who can beat him. You've talked about a lot the Habib fight. You'd love to see that. Like, I think everybody would love to see that. But I don't think Khabib is too interested. We haven't heard anything at all, I think, from his mouth about that. So even before he was retired. So I think for Usman, obviously a really impressive performance, absolute domination again, and I think he's proving and showing to people that he's not just this wrestler that we saw come in and tough, and maybe we saw get to the title and win the title, but he's a different guy than he was then. And I think we forget as well, as you mentioned with the other tough season, that he was on the Black Zillions, I think, tough, and he was very early in his career. He was basically learning MMA on the spot, and I see him continuing to evolve and become even better, and become even more dominant, and it's very hard to see somebody beating him at the moment.
I totally agree. I 100% agree. I think like someone asked me the other day, I did a Q&A on Instagram and said, who is the next riddle that people will have to break down in MMA? And I think it's Usman, because he's another one like Shinko. He's just so confident in all areas of the game. Like, I hope he's not one of these lads as well, though, that kind of forgets about his wrestling because he falls in love with his striking because it's so good. Because he did that. If he does that, it'll take away a little from his game. But that's been ultra critical after a big knockout like this. He's brilliant. He really, really is brilliant. And there's kind of like a cocky confidence with him as well, where he kind of takes the piss out of people and you don't realize he's doing it because he knows he's so much better than them. And I kind of like that as well out of Usman. But it was a great win. And like, it's one of those ones where there isn't actually that much to analyze in this fight. It's just a better fighter beating a good fighter who is not near his level. Just better. And like, even from like an athletic point of view, when Masvidal is trying to like break the distance with those shots, and I talked about it in the rewatch. I went back and watched their first fight. He's just very kind of slow and cumbersome trying to do that, and that's grand if you're fighting someone like a Darren Till, who or whoever else it might be. But when you're fighting someone like Usman, who is whose head moves all the time and who's quick and smart and powerful, you're not catching him out with basic things like that. So brilliant from Usman, and fair play to Masvidal for probably getting to a level where he's no business at. But all in all, insane card. It took us about an hour to go through the 5 fights on top, and that just tells you how absolutely insane it was. So before we get to next week's card, just a quick couple of mentions. KSW had a card as well. Phil DeFries beat Thomas Narcoon in the second round of this one, I believe, with punches. Sean Denny has all the results up on this one. Alexander Illich was also on this card. He got a good win, and there was lots of other fights on as well. Check out the results on SevereMMA.com. And then I suppose the biggest PFL card maybe ever went down on, what was it, Friday night, and there was a lot of interesting decisions on this one. Chris Wade came over and came down to 145 and did a good job beating Anthony Dizzy. Ahmed Alayev won his fight. And then, as we came up the card, Brendan Loughnane, I suppose he's the main one we want to talk about here. He looked absolutely fantastic against Shaman Moraes, knocked him out in just over 120 seconds. I've always been a big fan of Loughnane and always thought he was a very technical fighter who would beat most people, but he needed to maybe add something to his game to get to the very, very top level. And I think he might have done that. I think this kind of chip on his shoulder after the whole Dana White thing, he's talking about 10-second Brendan and stuff like that. He seems to have been helped by that. And I know everyone's probably talking about, like, that's the worst moment of his career and everything like that. I feel like it's turning into maybe the best moment of his career, because it's really turning him around. If he goes and he wins $1 million, I think he'll probably be delighted that it happened. But it looked to me a different Brendan Loughnane here. He looked like a guy who was fighting to prove something, and he looked like a guy who was going out there for the finish. And Shaman Moraes is no joke. Came into this fight 11-4, having fought in the UFC and things like that. And Brendan has fought a lot of fights, but he's been struggling to get to the big show, get the big fights. He wanted to fight Paddy Pimblett on the local scene, and he wanted to get to the UFC, and he fought in the Contender Series, and it's been a struggle for Brendan, and he wanted to fight for the last year, and because of the pandemic he couldn't. And all of that kind of came together, and he is well prepared for this position he's in at the moment. And that 145-pound division, Bubba Jenkins beat Lance Palmer as well, and Kabilayev won a fight here as well in that division. There's some very good fighters in that division, but Brendan Loughnane might be the best of them. Were you impressed with his performance? Ireland's own Brendan Loughnane.
Yeah, very impressed. We talked about it to death, but the weird grudge that Dana seems to have against him is this mysterious thing that nobody seems to really know why. It does seem to have motivated Brendan. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe it's all coming together. We saw him very early in his career again in the Ultimate Fighter and get a shot in the UFC. I think as a late replacement on the finale of that Tough show. When he was a different guy or a different fighter completely. Maybe that's playing into Dana's mind somehow or something like that. But even the guy that we saw live against Tom Duquesnoy, I think he, as you mentioned, he's turned the corner even since then. And I think people have been underestimating Brendan his whole career. Not a lot of people thought he had much of a chance against Tom Duquesnoy back then, and he went out there, went toe to toe with him. Easy to forget how much of a big prospect Tom Duquesnoy was, and how highly touted he was, and a lot of people thought Brendan won that fight. And then he's kind of done everything. He's done everything he can do. A lot of guys would say, I've done everything I can do, and get kind of demotivated by the situation and say, this is fucking bullshit, and get angry about it. But he seems to be channeling it in the right direction, and if he goes and wins that PFL tournament, he'll be making a lot more money than he can make in the UFC in those fights, and 100%. he'll be the one having the last laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah. Think about if he went in and won 3 or 4 fights in the UFC, you're probably maybe 20 grand per fight. 120 grand? Yeah. In the PFL, you can make the $1 million out of it, and I hope he does. It'd be great for him to do and kind of shove it up everyone. Dana White's arse and no harm. Fucking Dana White deserves a bit of that. But elsewhere in this card, Marcin Held was a plus 300 underdog against Nathan Schulte, which I couldn't believe, and I know, or Nathan even, he was the guy who won it last year. But I think Held is a very, very good fighter, and people underestimate him. And he did a great job here of winning this one. And then in the main event, Clay Collard coming back after his boxing excursion, where he did very well there, absolutely destroyed Anthony Pettis over 2 rounds. That second round was close to a 10-7. One judge didn't give it a 10-8, and to me, everyone knows I'm very much on the side of judges and very much on the I can understand why that happened. I think that was a disgraceful card, to be honest, in that second round. That was the clearest 10-8 you'll ever see. You could argue a 10-7. I was thinking 2 or 3 times during that round, stop the fight. And that's when you think about 10-7. So, yeah, if you see anyone scoring that 29-28, it's a bad one. I think the third, some people might say, why didn't Pettis win that 10-8? Because he almost knocked out Collard a couple of times. But for me, I think Collard was winning the round and was winning it well. So I think 29-27 was the right score with the 10-8 in the second. But Collard looked fantastic early. He was just touching up Pettis. Almost had him finished a couple of times. And as I said, Pettis, you can never rule out Pettis. Just he's dangerous and he goes for things.
He took it well, like that head kick and knee combination in a split second. That would have put away most people. And fair play to Collard. He's a tough bastard, and obviously he was kind of looking at the biggest win of his career, and maybe that motivated him to keep going. But he outputted a lot of energy in trying to finish Pettis in the second round as well. So, obviously we've seen it time and time again. These guys, maybe from the UFC or these bigger organizations, when they leave and go elsewhere, maybe it doesn't really, like a lot of the time, it doesn't really go well. Maybe it's they think these guys are beneath them, or they don't have to train as much, or something like that, or I don't know what it is, but it seems to happen time and time again. And as you mentioned, Pettis took a hell of a beating, and even still came back and nearly fucking won the fight. That combination probably would have finished most guys, even in the UFC. So, fair play to Collard. That was a fucking brilliant performance, and obviously overcoming adversity as well. Fucking brilliant fight as well. You can't. Obviously Pettis, people expect more from him or whatever, but that's not Clay Collard's fault. He went out there and got the job done in a spectacular fashion, in a spectacular fight, even if he didn't get the finish. Yeah, it was just a brilliant performance from Collard, and fair play to Pettis for coming back. But Pettis is I think it was a tough matchup for Pettis retrospectively, but he isn't what he used to be. And Pettis, we all know the issues with Pettis, and I asked him about it, his adjustments as a fighter, and he kind of said exactly what I think his problem always was kind of fighting what he meets, which he shouldn't really be doing, I think, the way he fights. But however, PFL have another smashing card coming up this Friday night, I believe. Rory McDonald in the main event against Curtis Melinder. Ray Cooper is on this card. Gleison Tebow versus Joseph Farino. My boy, the legend Chris Camozzi against Emiliano Sardi. Antonio Carlos Jr. against the world's premier wrestling podcaster Tom Lawler as well on this card. Vinny Makalesh is on the card. Cesar Fajea is on the card. Really good card for PFL. We talk about the gimmick and the tournament and all, and it's only as good as the people on it. And I think they have some very good people and some very noteworthy people. Even someone like, I joked about Tom Lawler there, but people know Tom Lawler and they like Tom Lawler, and it's good for PFL to have people like that, and Vinny Makalesh as well. So yeah, interesting. And also there's before we move on as well, I just got a text that one of the cards next week is when Aulun Asang is in the main event for the heavyweight title, I believe there. Rug is back. Shinya Aoki is fighting Fungalang. He was supposed to fight Sage Narco, but I think Sage got the old run, and his sister's on the card as well. But Eddie Alvarez is on this card as well against Ryu Oak. And Eddie Alvarez's last fight has been overturned to a no contest. So the one where those illegal shots, inverted commas, to the back of the head, where his opponent just decided to stop the fight himself, that's been overturned now, and that is from a text I just got. Hopefully it'll be official by the time this comes out, but that's been overturned to a no contest. So that's good. I think we all agree there was a no contest. The disqualification was a farcical decision in that one. So that's to me is very, very good. And the UFC card as well next week. Before we get to that, though, we must tell you to when you're looking at this UFC card, Dominic Reyes, Yuri Prochazka, sign up over at FightPix, the MMA app. Start your own league, complete head-to-head against other fans today. FightPix is available on iOS and Android. Check it out on fightpix.com. I had a terrible
terrible week on fight picks this week.
Yeah, me too.
I did not go well. Let me just look at the leaderboard here. Kalen is number 1. I was number 4 last week. Where I'm like, I'm down to number 8. I'm not too bad, so I'm not too far back. Graham, I'm looking for you here. You're number 25, so you're not doing too bad. But yeah, it's a good bit of fun. We're doing the UFC cards on that, but you can also pick the PFL cards, one cards, and everything like that. The Bellator cards. So great bit of fun. Fight picks. Go over to your app store, wherever it is, on iTunes or on iOS or Android. Search Fight Picks. You'll see the blue and white logo with big F on it. Download that. Sign up. If you go to search for league, just search Severe MMA and you'll find it there. Very easy and a good one to a good way to kind of keep up with the fights and everything. That's like the Fantasy Premier League, Fantasy, except better because there's an app and they don't have an app because they're fucking terrible. But sign up fightpicks.com as well. You'll find there direct link to the app. So this card, we'll run through it pretty quickly, Graham. It's not a bad card at all. Luke Saunders on the undercard. Gabriel Benitez, Randa Marcos, a few standouts there. On the main card then, Poliana Botello is back against Loan Carolina. Mirab Dashvili against Cody Staman. That's an interesting fight, actually, at bantamweight. We probably see a lot of takedowns in that, as you do with a lot of Dashvili's fights. Strickland against Jotko. That's probably a very tough battle we'll probably get in that one. Ian Kutalaba versus Dustin Jacoby. I think someone will get knocked out. That's my call for that one. And in the top 2 fights, really like him a lot. Giga Chikadze versus Cub Swanson. Whatever you want to say about Cub Swanson, I know, Graham, you're not the biggest Cub Swanson fan in the world, but that man takes fucking tough fights. And I think Giga Chikadze is a horrible matchup for Cub. I think Giga is absolutely a phenomenal fighter, and I think he could be he could be championship level, to be honest. I think he's that good. But this is a big step up for him as well. I'm really looking forward to seeing that fight, as well as the main event, Dominic Reyes versus Yuri Prochazka. We've seen Yuri being the champion of maybe the underground over in Rizin, until he came in and destroyed Volkan Ozdemir. It's almost a year ago now at this stage, July of 2020, after beating, likes of CB Dalloway, Maldonado, King Mo over in your boy, your what is it going to call it? Your wrestling coach, King Mo, Graham. But you're looking forward to these top 2 main fights. They're pretty good, aren't they? And there'll be a lot, I suppose, known.
Yeah, the last man to beat him was King Mo, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a long time ago. He's been on a serious streak, and he came in there against Ozdemir and put him away comprehensively, and he's only had one fight in the UFC, but he's been fighting, kind of tough guys, and taking the best matchups he can in Rizin before that. So, I'd favour him here. It could go either way. Like, Reyes is a very good fighter. Make no mistake about that. But I think momentum is a thing here, and I think he has a habit of putting people away with big punches, and I think he might do it again here.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think he's really, really good. That and his power and his just technique and everything. I think Prochazka is one of these lads where, it's going to take a very, very, very good fighter to beat him. And I think Reyes is very good, but I'm not. And I don't know if he's that good. But look, I'm looking forward to the both of them, and I'm looking forward to the main event, and I'm looking forward to the co-main event as well. Yeah. Right. Look, one last thing actually before we go. I know with this whole fucking Jake Paul shit, I don't want to talk about it too much, but now, in fairness, Daniel Cormier last week said if he saw Jake Paul in person, he's going to slap him. He said on the commentary live, if he saw Jake Paul, he's going to go up to him and he's going to slap him. He went up to Jake Paul, and I saw no slap, Graham. I think Jake Paul kind of, you can call that 1-0 to Jake Paul. The whole crowd was chanting his name. Look, this whole thing, and he came out yesterday, tweeted out about Dana White not paying his fighters and that he's earned more money than in his fucking second boxing bout than everyone bar Conor McGregor and Habib has earned in their whole career and all this, and putting it up to Dana White more than most fighters would. So I think there was a bit of a baby face turn from Jake Paul, and I think with Cormier as well. Cormier is one of these guys where I think he thinks he's more popular than he actually is. I think you know, people liked him because he was
And he
the
thinks it's
anti-Jen
pro
Jones
wrestling
guy.
half the time as well.
Yeah, he does as well. I think he's, you know, I think Ariel tweeted out about marking out for your own gimmick, and I don't know what he's going to say that about Jake Paul, maybe, because obviously he's Daniel's boy, but I think Cormier has a little bit as well, and he's trying to get, look, he says he's retired and all, and he's trying to get this big money fight as well against, or bout against Jake Paul, but, look, it's all a bit of fun, you know. It's all a bit of fun, but I don't think Cormier made himself look great there, you know, going up on this young lad who's a bit of a boxer and trying to intimidate him, and then Jake Paul didn't back down for 1 second. I was like, well, you know, that's not great. And also, didn't Dan Hardy get sacked for something not even as bad as this? So I don't know. I don't think Daniel Cormier should get sacked, but I just don't want him on commentary anymore. Can we just get him off? He's just terrible. But anyway, yeah. It's it's an interesting thing. I think. Do you know what? Do you know what's good about this? Right? It's a bit of fun. I know a lot of people hate it, but I've decided I can either hate it or I can treat it as a bit of fun. And I've started to do that. And I like this kind of gimmick that Jake Paul is going to beat up all these MMA fighters and stuff. It's funny, and he says things that MMA fighters can't say and won't say. Like, he put out that tweet yesterday, and no MMA fighter that I saw was like was agreeing with him or anything like that. None of them. And I'm like, well, you know, that makes a lot of sense, I suppose, doesn't it? But however, that's the thing we won't talk about much, I suppose. But if you have questions on the Q&A and you want me to mention it there, we shall do it there. But we will try to keep away from that as much as possible. All right. Bumper podcast this week. Thank you to everybody for listening. Sorry it was on a Monday. We should be back more than likely into Sunday next week. But with that, we shall leave you with the inspirational quote of the week. Fill yourself up with so much love that it pours into others' lives. We'll see you next Tuesday. Or maybe Monday or Sunday, whenever we'll see you at some stage. Welcome everybody. It's episode 309 of the Severe MMA podcast. My name is Sean Sheehan, aka the Pod God, the Score Lord, the Legend.